Have you ever heard of a Hindu Rite Mass? Well, we're going to be talking about that today with Dr. Jules Gomes on what is the Hindu Rite Mass and should it be suppressed? This and much more coming up soon.
But I want to jump into a couple of stories that you've posted over at Church Militant. One is pretty recent. The most recent says Francis won't abolish the Hindu Rite Eucharist. Now, I find this fascinating in light of the Motu Proprio and sort of the pressure being put on traditional communities now across the world. What does this mean for other rites within the Roman Catholic Church? I didn't even know there was a Hindu rite. What is the Hindu rite?
Well, the Hindu rite is actually technically called an Indian rite. It was created after Vatican II, in the light of Vatican II in 1969. Actually, there was a lobby, a liberal lobby pushing to create this, and the bishops were rushed into a vote. And the Congregation for Divine Worship from the Vatican gave permission for this so-called Indian rite, which is, as I said, actually a Hindu rite, since it incorporates exclusively Hindu elements of ritual, scriptures, etc., into the liturgy. And this has gone on for 5 decades.
Wow.
It's caused a lot of problems in India. It's created huge divisions. I mean, you yourself mentioned the recent Motu Proprio. And the reason Pope Francis gives for reversing Pope Benedict's Summorum Pontificum is its divisiveness. Ironically, this Indian or Hindu Rite Mass has been monumentally divisive because it's not only divided the upper caste, so-called upper caste Catholics from the vast majority of the lower caste who have for centuries regarded Brahmanical Hinduism as structurally oppressive and have fled Hinduism to convert to Christianity. So you can imagine what a shock this is for them. But it's also divided, obviously, conservatives and liberals within the Catholic Church in India. And interestingly enough, it has divided people who are it's divided Hindus from Catholics, because Hindus are now accusing Catholics of cultural appropriation, of plagiarism, of distorting their symbols and using it in a form for which it was never intended.
This should be concerning for all Catholics worldwide, no matter their heritage. How is it that this has been taking place, and how come we're just now discovering this?
Well, that's a very good point you've raised, Joe. Your critics, the liberals, would argue that all liturgy has at some point been borrowed from pagan religions, even the traditional Latin Mass, some would say, elements of these liturgies. I, of course, totally disagree with that. What is problematic, but also a possibility here, is that this can be traced back, at least in India, to the Jesuit missionary Robert de Nobile, who came with the intention of converting the Hindus and baptizing them into the Catholic faith. And so he adopted the dress, for example, of a Brahmin priest, a high caste Hindu. Now, what has happened after Vatican II, particularly with Lumen Gentium and Nostra Aetate, the Indian Catholic Church has virtually interpreted these documents and called for a moratorium on evangelization. So the definition of evangelization now is making a Hindu a better Hindu, or a Muslim a better Muslim. I mean, that's horribly patronizing in the first place, but it goes totally against the Great Commission of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Go out into the whole world and preach the good news. If these Hindu rite or Indian rite masses were intended as a means for conversion, so Hindus in some way would recognize that the Christian faith is not a Western faith, but it is part of the great Indian heritage, because Christianity came to India with the Apostle Thomas. A very good tradition has it, 2,000 years ago. However, priests and bishops who promote the Indian Rite Mass don't believe in evangelization. So it's almost a fashion, it's a fad, and it's inculturation or indigenization for the sake of it. And that they draw out a very badly interpreted text from the prologue of St. John's Gospel. The Word was made flesh and dwelt among us. And so just as Jesus was fully incarnate, particularly as a Jewish man in his Jewish culture, so Indian Catholicism needs to be fully incarnate in Indian culture. But again, what is Indian culture? It's not Hindu culture. It's a whole wide range of diverse cultures. And this Mass, unfortunately, has selected elements exclusively from Hinduism, including chanting Hindu mantras in the language of Sanskrit during the Mass.
That's horrible.
I have so many questions, but I think I'm going to go this route. The Syro-Malabar Mass rite of the Church, isn't that not a authentic Catholic rite of the Church that originated in India, traces its lineage to, like you were saying, St. Thomas the Apostle? Why do we need an Indian rite if the Syro-Malabar rite already exists? Could you explain the relationship there?
I mean, that's such a wonderful point you've made. I mean, it's absolutely spot on. In fact, your point was made by the head of the RSS, one of the most, perhaps the most militantly Hindu organization in this country. And he told Catholics, he said, Christianity in this country does go back right to the Syrian period, the Syriac period. And so if we have one of the most ancient liturgies in the world, and in some forms, Syriac is used during the Mass. In some of the seminaries, Syriac is taught, an ancillary language of Aramaic that Jesus spoke. I mean, why on earth has the Indian Catholic Church not gone along with the Syro-Malabar rite? Unfortunately, and I must say this, the Syro-Malabar rite has been confined to a mono-ethnic group of people, the Malayalis or the Keralites, who come from the region of Kerala. And again, if they had taken evangelism more seriously and promoted and preached the gospel and brought people to the Catholic faith and then brought them up in the Syro-Malabar rite, that would be absolutely splendid. But again, this ethnic group, has kept Catholicism to itself to a large extent.
Wow. Dr. Jules Gomes is our guest. He is the Rome correspondent for Church Militant. With about 5 minutes or so left on the clock, I would like to switch topics here and go to another one of your articles, if that's okay. Vatican invests millions in fake highway. The continuing saga of financial scandal coming out of the Curia is depressing. I mean, we're seeing money being spent, hard-earned donated dollars from the faithful around the world on crazy things. Tell us what's going on with this particular story on a fake highway.
Well, this story is part of a much larger story, and there are 10 people, including one of the most senior cardinals. Actually, he was sostituto, second in command to Cardinal, the Secretary of State, who is the second in command in the whole Vatican. And millions were invested in all sorts of shady deals, including Elton John's homosexual biopic, Rocket Man. And again, millions were invested in a luxury property estate in Sloane Avenue, one of the poshest districts of London. And this, again, I think it is 6 million euros or something of that. It's a very large sum of money invested in this imaginary highway, supposedly in North Carolina. So Cardinal Angelo Becciu, who has been in charge of the whole thing, is claiming he's innocent. His brothers apparently have also benefited from these kickbacks. But he says that, well, this is how, we've traditionally always done business in Italy. And no real ethical norms have been violated. So we just have to wait and see. The hearing begins on the 27th of July, and the 500 pages of the indictment, of that 75 pages dedicated exclusively to Cardinal Angelo Becciu, who also has had a further problem with what the media are calling the Cardinal's glamour girl, paying huge sums of money to this lady, Cecilia Maronia, to do investigative intelligence consultancy for the Vatican, particularly for the Vatican's embassies in troubled spots of the world. So financially speaking, in terms of corruption, this is the swamp, really the swamp. And all sorts of cover-ups, all sorts of attempts to say that, we're doing something about it, have been made. But unless there is total transparency, and you rightly say, Peter Spence, it's the mite of the widow, the orphan, the poor person, the man in the pew. Where is all that money going? Unless people are honestly told that here is where your money is going to. I think lots and lots of people have given up on donating to the Pope's charitable fund.
Now, let's talk about that for a second. So there are a lot of people I know personally who are like, I'm done. I cannot give another dime to support this insanity that they're just wasting our money on these crazy things. Would that stop those at the Vatican that would do crazy things? If they're not getting money from donors, where are they getting money from?
Well, that's a good question. They aren't getting money from a lot of places. I mean, when they do put up gigs like this utterly crazy global health conference that was held last month or in May, I think, they got tons and tons of money from the Mormons of all, all people.
The Mormons. Oh, that's lovely.
Exactly.
The
Mormons. And they got money from all sorts of dubious health groups that are pushing the vaccine, among other things. But on the whole, there is a huge financial black hole at the Vatican. And good Catholic economists tell us it's partly because Pope Francis himself has created the attitude where a Catholic is no longer called to be charitable in terms of me putting my hand into my pocket and pulling out my own money and putting it in the plate. But because Pope Francis talks so much about the equal distribution of wealth, these scholars say that in itself, apart from the financial scandals, are sending a very wrong message all across the Catholic world. And this is one of the reasons for the decimation of Catholic finances here at the Vatican. But the situation is very, very serious. The salaries of cardinals were cut on the 1st of April this year. It was an April Fool's joke. Pope Francis seems to have played on the cardinals. There's downsizing and all sorts of things. But you're right. It doesn't seem to, they don't seem to smell the coffee and say, gosh, we are in big trouble. Right. Let's do something to change.
Yeah, well, golly gee whiz. Is it even possible to correct all this? That one wonders.
If you like that interview, then be sure to check out some of our other interviews that you might find fascinating. And don't forget to like and subscribe and share this interview with someone that you think will find this informative and inspiring. God love you.